becoming very good generalist, and it was designed for fire brigade, police and army, if I remember, because these guys need to be proficient at a number of different things at a high intensity over a short duration of time, you know, carrying heavy load. So this is not what we do.
Do you reckon it's come to CrossFit now speed over quality?
Sorry?
So you say CrossFit Games is more like speed over
It's they're looking for efficiency of the movement pattern, so how to get something from one point to the other with, as fast as you can, consuming as little amount of energy as possible. So yeah, it changes things, you know, because when you're dealing with building strength, that's not necessarily the most effective way to do it. If you're competing in an event, it's the only way to do it, you know. So you have to draw the line between what is sport and what is strength training or conditioning, and draw a line between what is training for performance and what is training for health and vitality. They're very different things, because if you're training for performance, the average power athlete life expectancy is 60 years old. How is that healthy? To me, that's like, okay, you've chosen the glory, that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But just be aware that this is not health and vitality. They're two very different categories.
Yeah, it's you know, you look at the CrossFit Games and they're professional athletes, right? So, and that's any professional athlete in any sport is making a choice, whether they know it or not, to sacrifice a little bit of longevity for intensity or, you know, glory for a short period of time, which is why we love sports people so much. But the idea that you can take someone from the general population and who wants to lose a bit of weight and get a bit fitter and put them into the same program and give them the same kind of goal set, in theory it's nice. It's nice to call them an athlete and treat them like that, but it's not the right approach. It's not the approach that we chose to go.
No, it's not our approach.
You know, and that's just because we did it for a little while, right? Like we both went through CrossFit coach training, we did it, and you know, I played around with it for a couple of years, and you know, I was PTing and ran a lot of my clients through the same kind of thing, and I was like, fuck, these people are just getting tighter and more injuries, and they're not really improving. Like they're getting fitter, the workouts are faster and more intense, but really, what's happening to their body, you know, over the long term, you know? So
and there's still plenty of aspects of CrossFit that we take and we utilise here.
Yeah,
it's changed the industry for the better, but there's a dark side to it as well. You know, I think it doesn't matter what environment you're in. You have to be in tune with your own goals, what you want out of your training, whether it's performance or if it's vitality or whatever it is, and make sure that that's at the forefront of your mind before you take part in any activity. You know, there's two ways of doing things. You know, even here, you can come in here and hammer and nail the whole way through the session, or you can just turn that dial down a little bit and focus on range of motion or quality of movement, and this changes things completely. It definitely changes the outcome and the way your body responds to that approach. You know, the mindset you have on yourself, even the amount of pressure you put on yourself when you go into the gym to train. If you have this huge amount of pressure on your back where you have to perform, you have to get more weight on the bar, you have to get a submission or whatever it is, or you need to be training up for an event, this is excess stress on the body, you know? And how much of that do you want to be carrying around, and what kind of effect is it going to have on you long term, you know? And if you're aware of it, a lot of people just aren't even aware of it, but if you're aware of it, then you can make a logical decision, you know?
Yeah, I think it's probably a good time to go into a bit more of the method and the class programming off the back of that. I think it'll also probably get, there'll be a few questions from people here about, you know, training in general. We've got to cover some topics like class programming, why strength and movement, why am I not sweating. You boys write the programs. Why are people not sweating?
That before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Oh, okay. Coming over.
thanks, Ian. So like a quick background on the class programming. We have maybe 7 different programs we run in the gym. T and myself program all of it. Al programs some of it for himself sometimes too, for movement prep and whatnot, and acro strength when that's running. And basically, Programming just means that we sit down and decide on what that class is going to look like. So we decide on what the intention behind that class is and what the goal is. And so when we do that, we look at the group of people, the body of people, which is you, the members. We look at what we're working with. It's like, okay, it's strength and movement class. So we know that in the strength and movement class, we want some general strength work. We want some mobility work. We also want something movement based. Okay, cool. What do the guys suck at the moment? What new stuff can we expose them to? What are they having trouble with? And then we try to put something together based on that. So we tend to do it in blocks of like 4 to 8 week cycles. It's a super lengthy process. It's probably we've boxed ourselves into a corner there because we do run so many different programs. It's a pretty big task. But essentially, we think it's kind of what sets us apart from a lot of places because we're in touch with the people that we're writing it for, and then we're writing the program, you know, at the moment based on what that group of people needs. Why so much strength and movement?
I don't really know what that question means. What does it mean? Like,
Well, okay, so here's the thing. The strength side of things for us, like, strength and movement was the original term that we applied to Jungle Brothers. Jungle Brothers Strength and Movement.
oh, the class strength. Okay.
Yeah, well, just as a term that we use, you know, and I guess we noticed that for a lot of people, strength is the main thing they lack. A lot of people will go to a gym and claim that they need to get fitter or that they need cardiovascular health. And that's, you know, something that's often prescribed by general practitioners, doctors and whatnot, that you need to keep your heart healthy. And my dad just started training with me. He's in his mid-60s, and him and mum are constantly telling me that he needs to keep his heart strong, right? So I make him do strength training. And, you know, he does some deadlifting and his heart rate gets up and he gets a little bit sore and that kind of thing. And so what I'm telling him is that he doesn't need to get his heart rate up. That's not the focus for him at this point, because you can have the best heart in the world. You can have Lance Armstrong's heart. But if you've got shitty mechanics and the car's falling apart, it doesn't matter how good the engine is. If the mechanics can't handle it, it's going to come to a pretty bad ending, right? On the flip side of that, if you have good mechanics, if the body works well, if the tissue is strong, the joints are strong, the range of motion's there, you can control yourself against gravity, then by nature of having developed that, your heart has to be strong. If I can go and do 5x5 deadlift at a reasonable amount of weight, and I can do a couple of chin-ups, and then I can do some rope climbs, and then play some games and whatever, my heart has to be strong enough to handle that workload. So by focusing on the strength side of things, that gives all of the other outcomes that we tend to want. And it has a bit of a twofold kind of meaning. Physical strength, but also a little bit the mental strength, and that's where the fight side of things comes in. It's going away from the kind of Poindextery kind of plastic nylon fitness kind of approach that you might see at like the Fitness First Platinum with the fucking showers and the saunas and stuff, where it's like everything's disinfected and everyone's wearing like the newest spacey shoes and whatnot, and it's like, man, like, you know, have you actually touched someone today? Did you fall in your training? Did you take your shoes off? Did you like maybe tear your skin a little bit because you were hanging on the bar for too long? And like all of those little things is like, that's making you a little bit stronger, you know? It's like, there's the chin-ups and all those things, but it's like, how durable, how strong are you actually as an individual, you know? And going back to the primal thing, it's like, we've become pretty fucking weak these days. For a lot of you people, the first thing that people say when they come in here, we'll be doing some kind of warm-up, and usually there's some hanging involved, and the first thing that people complain about is how much it hurts the skin on their hands. Right? You guys have all been there, myself too, and it's like, that's how fucking bad it is. That your skin is now so weak that you can't even support your body weight, right? So it's like, don't even worry about your muscles, your skin has become weak. You know what I mean? So there's a bit of a thing there, right? And then the movement side of things, that's just, that again has two meanings. That's like moving your body, fighting, lifting. It's giving you freedom. It's allowing us to incorporate all of the activities that we're passionate about. But the original part of the movement thing was, I think, maybe Paul's idea, and this was us going against the grain of fitness and starting a movement that went in a counter direction to where everyone else was headed. So yeah, that was, you know, there's probably a little bit more behind that than just the physical side, right? Political
kind of stance.
Yeah, all of our initial imagery was like Soviet kind
Yeah, it
of
was.
fists and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
original.
Join the movement.
Yeah. Original logo had a guy with a flag on it. Which was awesome.
So why aren't you guys sweating that much? Yeah, so this is an interesting one too, right? Because if we look at what mainstream fitness kind of prescribes a lot of the time, it's that same thing. It's like cardiovascular aerobic. Like you go back to the 80s and it's like the Jane Fonda aerobic style thing and everyone's wearing the headbands and shit. And then you go into the 90s and it's still kind of doing body pump and stuff like that. And then you go to 2000s, everyone's still doing body pump and shit. Like it's kind of the same shit, right? Everyone's bouncing around getting sweaty. But no one's actually getting any stronger or any better or any more skillful, right? So the sweating thing, it's an exercise thing. And the exercise thing, in my opinion, is a little bit, it's kind of this feedback loop. Katie Bowman, who's an interesting author, she described it as this kind of reverse feedback loop that we now have with exercise, where it's like you indulge too much and eat too much shit and drink too much alcohol, so then you go and do exercise to offset your shitty lifestyle. And it goes in that kind of cycle, right? Which in reality is why a lot of people exercise. The way it was meant to be was that when you needed food, or when you needed shelter, or when you needed to save your family's life, you needed physical attributes in order to escape or to hunt the food or to eat or whatever it was. So the idea was, I need food, or I need safety, or I need to live, so I do movement, and that's how I continue to survive. So we flipped it around now, you know, and it goes in the wrong way, and there's a really negative connotation with that. If you're purely exercising as a way to offset a shitty lifestyle, that's not a really enjoyable existence, right? Because you're kind of constantly subconsciously punishing yourself for the wrongs that you've done on a daily basis, right? So our thing is like, it's not about sweating, it's not about burning calories. That is a byproduct of the process. You get that in some of the training. But our thing is, it's about developing yourself. It's about learning to move better. Whichever class it is, it's focusing on something. Maybe it's flexibility, maybe it's strength, maybe it's gymnastics. But the idea is that you are developing yourself. And sometimes in that process, sweat's not so involved. You know, maybe it's a lifting class and it's a slow tempo class and you're pushing around heavy weights. You actually are burning more calories in a class like that than if you went and did an hour of 400-meter sprints and whatnot. But the idea is that sweat is not the metric by which you determine how hard you're training, whereas a lot of people do consider it that way. If they walk out of a workout and they're sweating and they're breathing really heavy and they're on the ground and gasping for air, they feel like that was the one, you know? It wasn't actually. 10 minutes after that, you feel fine and your body's recovered. Whereas if you come to a movement prep class, you might not break a sweat for the whole session, but for the next fucking 3 days, every muscle in your body's screaming at you, you know? And that's adaptations that are occurring. That's calories being consumed. That's fat being eaten up. That's muscle growing. It's connective tissue remodeling. It's all of those things that we want from the training. But because many of us have been a little bit influenced by fitness, we think that there has to be sweat. Anything, Dad?
No, yeah. Yeah.
Talk to us about loaded mobility and strength out of alignment.
Well, Petros has something to say about movement prep. If movement prep is so integral, should that not be a daily class? Petros, thanks for the answer, for the question.
I don't think it has to be daily, but I definitely think there needs to be some element for anyone who's training in our gym of it on a weekly basis. Consistency, so maybe 2 or even 3 movement preps a week will help accelerate all your potential growth in other areas of the gym and also mitigate the chances of getting injured. And that's because the program is designed around building just the foundation of the body.
A lot of the mobility drills from the movement prep class are scattered throughout every session though anyway. Right?
Yeah, they are. It's kind of like hiding the vegetables in the bolognese through the other classes, and then movement prep's just a big bowl of vegetables.
Do movement prep classes, do they usually complement whatever current strength and movement classes are happening at the same time? Is that usually how it works, or is it just like any random movement prep?
We were combining the jungle gymnastics with movement prep, so they work with each other, but we came to the same conclusion that it needs to be, all the classes need to be dovetailing each other. So everything should